All right, good afternoon, mathematicians. I'm making this video because I don't know, I just feel like we might need a little bit of extra help with simplifying square roots. Okay, we learned in class today, towards the end of class, how to simplify these things, but I just kind of want to clarify a few things and just, I don't know, just walk through a few more problems, because that just kind of helps. Okay. So the tips I gave you in class, I told you that usually you want to try to split the number under the radical. Try to split the number into what we call a perfect square, and we went over this definition in class today. So into a perfect square and another number. Now, if you do this, I feel like it's the most direct way to simplify square roots. So, if we take a look at the first problem, we have 96, and honestly, it's a little bit of a, I don't want to say guess and check, but if you're not super comfortable with your perfect squares or anything like that, it might become something like that. So I know that 96 can be divided by, well, let's see. If I divide it by 2, I get 48, right? Then I could divide that by 2 again. So then I get 4 times 24. Oh, let me see if I can divide it by 16. Oh, there we go. So it looks like I can rewrite this as the square root of 16 times 6. And then I can rewrite this as the square root of 16 times the square root of 16. And I know this, or sorry, the square root of 16 times the square root of 6. I know the square root of 16 is 4, so I'll say that the square root of 96 is the same thing as 4 times the square root of 6. I can't break down 6 anymore. I mean, if I do, I get this. I get 4 times the square root of 2 times 3, but I can't take the square root of 2. I can't take the square root of 3 without having to use my calculator, and I get a really long decimal. So to get the most exact answer, I'm just going to leave it as 4 times the square root of 6, or 4 rad 6. And there we go. All right, let's take a look at question number 2. 216. Actually, hold on. Before I move on to number 2. So the idea of a perfect square, right? Take a look here. My perfect square is 16, right? Because I can easily take the square root of a perfect square. Okay, now on to number 2. So the 216, let me see if I could divide that by, can I divide that by 16? No, I can't. I could do 216, I can divide it by, let's try 7, nope. 216, I could divide that by, let's try 12. Okay, so now I want to show you guys this. So I know that 12 goes into this, and I know 18 goes into this. Okay, and I know that 12 and 18 can be broken down even further, so I'm going to do, so 12 is 4 times 3, and then I also have 18, which could be 9 times 2. Okay, I'm going to rewrite this, so I do the square root of 4 times the square root of 3 times the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. I can definitely solve these two, the square root of 4 and the square root of 9. So I do, so square root of 4 is 2. I'm going to keep this in the same order just for now. The square root of 9 is 3, and then I multiply by the square root of 2. Now remember that multiplication is commutative, so it doesn't matter what order we do it in. So I'm going to rewrite this as 2 times 3 times the square root of 3 times the square root of 2. Now 2 times 3 I know is 6. So 6 times the square root of 3 and 6 times the square root of 2. I can multiply these two together because really this is just the same thing as 3 times 2 underneath the square root sign. So my final answer here is 6 times the square root of 6. All right, let's keep going. Number 3, I'm at 98. So let's see, I think this one is Let me see, 98 divided by 7. Oh, there we go. So I could do 14 times 7. Now, can I split 14 anymore? I think I can. Let's do 7 times 2 times 7. Okay, I'm going to rearrange this. I'm going to rearrange my numbers so I have 7 times 7 times 2. I know that 7 times 7 is 49. Actually, I don't want to get too close to the other problem. So 7 times 7 is 49. There we go. Don't I have a perfect square now? Right? So the idea is to get perfect squares somewhere involved in your radical or underneath the radical. Okay, so in this case, it's my 49 or the 7 times 7. Because now I can do the square root of 49 times the square root of 2. So I get 7 times the square root of 2. And that's my final answer. Okay, let's keep going. Square root of 18. Oh, we did this one in class, I believe. So I can rewrite the square root of 18 as the square root of 9 times 2, which is the same thing as the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. I know that the square root of 9 is 3, and when I multiply that by square root of 2, I get 3 rad 2. Excellent. Let's keep going. I know that the square root of 72, I know 72 can be broken into, I can do 6 times 12. And then I can also split 12 so that it's 6 and 2. And then, well, 6 times 6 gives me 36. And do you see how that's a perfect square? Right? So creating that perfect square underneath the radical sign. So there we go. Now I have it. So now I can split this into the square root of 36 times the square root of 2. I know that the square root of 36 is 6, and then when I multiply that by the square root of 2, I get 6 rad 2. All right, let's continue. Hey, the square root of 144. Well, what times itself gives me 44? I know that 12 squared equals 144, so this is equal to 12. All right, square root of 45. So again, remember, you're looking for perfect squares. Perfect squares involved somewhere underneath the radical. I can rewrite the square root of 45 as the square root of 9 times 5. So the square root of 9, that becomes the square root of 9 times the square root of 5. I know the square root of 9 is 3, and when I multiply that by the square root of 5, I get 3 rad 5. All right, let's keep going. Square root of 175. I can rewrite this as, let me see if 175 is divisible by 25. It is. So I'm going to do 25 times 7. There's my perfect square. Sorry, I forgot to do this in my last one. 9 is my perfect square. So I can rewrite this as the square root of 25 times the square root of 7. I know the square root of 25 is 5, and when I multiply that by the square root of 7, I get this. All right. Almost done, you guys. Okay, 343, or the square root of 343. I know what I know that this is divisible by 7. So 343 divided by 7 gives me 49. So I know that it's 49 times 7. Which is nice, but you might have to search around a little bit for this one. Okay, so the square root of 49 times the square root of 7. I know that the square root of 49 is 7, and 7 times the square root of 7 is just that. All right, number 10. Oh, this is another one we did in class. I can split the square root of 12 into the square root of 4 times 3, which I can then split to the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. The square root of 4 is 2, and then when I multiply that by the square root of 3, I get 2 rad 3. All right, last two. All right, 10 times 96. Excuse me, 10 times the square root of 96. Let's do 96 divided by, okay, so I know that 8 times 12 gives me 96. I'm going to split the 8. I'm going to also split the 12. Here, let's see. I could do 4 times 2 for 8, and then I could do, I kind of want to stick with 4s. Yeah, 4 times 3, and I'm going to rearrange this so that my 4s are together. So 4 times 4 times 2 times 3. And then, hey, look at that. I have a perfect square now. 4 times 4 is 16, and then I have this times 2 times 3. So now I can split this. I have the square root of 16 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 3. Oh my goodness, I've been doing this without 10 in front of here. I'm sorry, you guys. There should be a 10 out in front because there's a 10 in our original problem. So when I get to this final step here, it should be 10 times the square root of 16 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 3. I'm going to move up here. So I know that the square root of 16 is 4, so my work is simplifying to this. And I'm going to rewrite the square root of 2 times the square root of 3 underneath one radical sign. So I get this. Okay, 10 times 4 is 40. 2 times 3 is 6. So my final answer is going to be 40 rad 6. All right, last one. Here we go. So I need to split this 245. So if I mean, it's divisible by 5, so let me see what that is. 245 divided by 5 is 49. Oh, that's nice. 49 times 5. Because here I have my perfect square. I forgot to do this in the previous problem again. Here's my perfect square. These two 4s, which becomes 16. Okay, so now I can split this. So now it's 9 times the square root of 49 times the square root of 5. So the idea behind these simplifying radicals, or the one thing that you guys need to remember, is that there's a lot of multiplication happening between all of these numbers. Okay, so really between all the numbers, multiplication is constantly going on. So the square root of 49 is 7, so let me simplify a little bit. So 9 times 7 times the square root of 5. 9 times 7 is 63, and when I multiply that by the square root of 5, I get 63 rad 5. Okay, I hope this video helped you guys. Please come see me if you need some extra help. I will gladly sit and work with you. All right? Well, again, hopefully this helped, and I will see you guys in the next lesson.